Hi guys, Jay Nelson here once again, and over the past 24 hours, Japanese social media has been completely flooded with discussion about the business management visa that has changed as of, I think it was October last year. And when the rule originally changed, I saw some Japanese people talking online about how it's good to crack down on these things, but it wasn't a massive story. However, yesterday, or the day before, I think there was a kind of press conference and a change.org petition from a person who owned an Indian restaurant who's going to be closed, and the person who owns it and his family will have to return to India because the rules of the visa have changed. Now, as pictures and summaries of this conference came out, Japanese social media went absolutely crazy. Like, I'm talking tens of thousands of comments, easily, probably even more. Every time I open X, which, I don't really like to go on too much, but for things like this, I just wanted to see what people are saying. It's just basically only talking about this. Now, there are people who are for the person, there are people who are very strict against the person. So I'm going to try and summarize what's gone on. And first, I'm going to talk about what the changes to the business management visa actually are. So in Japan, you could open a company, and if you had 5 million yen in capital, you could get a visa so that allowed you to stay in Japan and operate that company. Now, 5 million yen is a huge amount of money to some, but it's not a massive amount of money. And you didn't need to have any employees, you didn't need to have any language requirements. You basically just had to operate in Japan, as far as I'm aware. Again, it doesn't really affect me too much because I'm a permanent resident, but having just 5 million yen in capital, and then obviously you have to, do your yearly taxes and stuff like that, provide data to the law office and stuff like that. But you were able to get a business management visa in Japan. Now, as of last year, those requirements changed a lot. So the capital, which is shihonkin in Japanese, and if you do open a company, you can open a company with just a shihonkin of 1 yen. It's just like you can just put any capital. However, it's kind of attached to trust as well. If your company has a shihonkin of just 100 yen, other companies might not take you very seriously and you might not be able to succeed. But if you have a huge capital, then, that's just how business works. However, the capital was raised to 30 million yen, which is about, apparently at the moment, or when this kind of NHK at the time of the visa changed made, I'll put it on the screen, was about $190,000, which is a lot of money. You also had to have at least one full-time employee. And I guess if you do have a company of 30 million yen, you would have enough business to have employees. But that employee either had to be a Japanese person or a permanent resident or the spouse of a permanent resident. And then finally, either the employee, if a permanent resident, or you yourself, as applying for the visa, had to be proficient in Japanese. So this is kind of the big change that's happened. Now, there are a lot of opinions going around whether that is good or not. And I think this is one of the difficult things because it's very difficult to be objective or fair, because this will, the way that people feel about this will completely depend on their situation. If you did have the business manager visa at the 5 million yen level, you are obviously going to be upset because it directly affects you. If you believe that immigration should go down or should be better tightly controlled, you are going to believe that the change is good. It's just with anything in politics, it's just going to depend on your situation, and it just depends on what you believe. Now, I would say I do believe that 5 million yen with no employees was quite low, to be honest. And again, this doesn't affect me. It is quite low, because I do know people, I actually personally know people who wanted to live in Japan. So basically they would just receive money from their family and open a company, and that was enough. They would have like an office space, and they might do something, not really make much money, but they would just keep that capital in their account, and that was enough. And I think one of the things that kind of spurred these changes is all of these companies owned by Chinese people who are just buying properties and using them to rent out. And that's how people are able to get visas, bring their families over and stuff like that. It's kind of a way that the system could be exposed, I guess, taken advantage of. Now, I think raising the capital is good. And to be honest with you, I think there should have been some other rules implemented as well, such as, is this company at the benefit of Japan? Okay, so I've got a time limit now because my wife just called and needs to be picked up in about 25 minutes. So I've got to leave soon. But, so the rule changed, and I think the company should be of benefit to Japan or Japanese people, because I also know people who live in Japan who have opened a company here that only targets people who are other foreigners. They cannot speak Japanese. They offer services to other expats, or their business is outside of Japan. If you do just have 5 million yen to open a company and you bring all of your family, what are they going to do once they're in Japan? And things like that. So the guy who's at the center of all this, the Indian guy, he has run an Indian restaurant for a long time. And this is the center of the change petition, to say that because now of this change to the business management visa, he's going to have to leave Japan. He's going to have to close his store. His wife and his daughter was born in Japan and apparently can only speak Japanese. They're going to have to leave Japan unless the rule is scrapped. And I kind of feel sorry for him at the same time, as I feel that it's not fair to use him as a sympathy draw to this, because I guess one of the issues with now, because they've used him as this centerpiece of this change, people are going to scrutinize him personally and his family. Now, basically, all of the comments online are talking about, he's been in Japan for 30 years. Why isn't he a permanent resident? Couldn't he have just... the rules of permanent residency are more strict, but he's been here long enough that he could have changed a long time ago. His daughter's apparently in high school. Apparently he cannot speak Japanese very well. In the video, he seems to speak quite well, but people are claiming he can't read and write Japanese. So people are saying, like, you had the chance to become a permanent resident, or maybe even naturalize a long, long time ago. You've been in Japan for 30 years, run this Indian restaurant for, I think it was 18. Well, why haven't you changed to a different visa? Why is this the thing that's going to cut you out? And I can see both sides. Like, we don't know why he couldn't change to a permanent resident. I'm going to assume that there probably was a good reason why he didn't. And when I say good reason, again, the speculation is, is it possible that he wasn't paying his taxes? Who knows? I don't know what the strictness of becoming a permanent resident is like if you're not married to a Japanese person, for example, or you're from India. I don't know how strict it is for those people. So, but I guess at the same time, running a business for 18 years would have been a good reason for Japan to want you to stay a long time if the business is profitable. So the change website says, your local Indian curry restaurant, you can get a 900 yen lunch. That's a bit too cheap. Fresh naan, freshly baked naan. The owner is always smiling, but within 3 years, this place might disappear. And it's not due to our situation in terms of business. It's not because we're losing customers. It's only because of the visa changes. And there is talk as well about how, you know, it's not just this Indian curry. It's basically all of these kind of, you know, kebab shops Thai restaurants, Vietnamese restaurants, Vietnamese supermarkets, they all basically will disappear with this visa change. Now, this is where you have to try and think on both sides. Yes, I love Indian curry. Yes, I love kebabs. I mean, I love kebabs. Is having a restaurant a good enough reason to be given a visa to live in Japan? I don't know what the rules are like for other countries. Could this person go to England and just open an Indian restaurant and receive a visa? Because where my school used to be, Ichikawa, there was about 6 or 7 Indian restaurants within a small space. Now, I don't want to sound rude, but if there's like 6 or 7 Indian restaurants within a small space, I can't assume that they're all there because the demand for Indian curry is so high. Because I would walk around and I would never really see anyone in them. So it's also a case of like, is it because I'm sure some of them are great. My local Indian is always full of people, but the staff are sometimes a little sketchy. The staff changes a lot. And considering, well, I say in Indian, it's actually Nepalese owned, but they just call it Little India. But the staff changes all the time. And that's a little bit weird. But when you've got so many of the same cuisine in a small amount of space, I can't imagine it's because the demand for that cuisine is so hard. There's been a few comments as well to say, well, 63 people have signed this change petition. If every one of those persons give him 500 yen, they could save his shop. But it's not about that, really. It's like, because you can't do that for every single person. I think there has to be a reality one day where we say, look, 5 million yen capital with no employees, that was too kind, let's be honest. That was very, very kind. Because 5 million yen, it's not a huge amount of money, especially with the yen being so weak right now. Getting 5 million yen when you're from another country, it's not the hardest thing in the world. Again, it's still a lot of money, but it's not that difficult. So I do agree that changes need to be made. I think having an employee is very important. Japanese proficiency, very important. Maybe there should have been a little bit of middle ground with the Japanese proficiency. I guess one other solution would be that a Japanese person could just take over his company, and then he gets hired as a chef. But I believe, I've just looked at the skilled labor visa, that you have to have 10 years of experience, but including culinary school. So if you wanted to get a skilled labor visa as a chef, you also have that as well. So that's another hurdle. I did try and ChatGPT about whether you could just get a loan and use that as capital. And it came back to say that immigration is also scrutinizing the source and legitimacy of the capital. And this is all from ChatGPT, so it's not necessarily too important. So you can't just put 5 million yen in the bank account and be done with it, which is actually what used to happen. I talked about my friend before who just had 5 million yen and got a business management visa. You can't do that anymore. And I think that is a good thing. Like, of course, 30 million yen too high, but just having the money, because that just encourages people. If you're rich or have the money, you could just give money to people and get visas. That's a little bit of a shortcut into the system when so many people are working hard to move to Japan and work here. So because business loans are debt, capital investment is supposed to represent real risk-bearing funds invested to the company. And if you have 30 million yen, they might want to know where it comes from, if it's genuine capital, whether you can fund the business. Because if you do take out a massive loan, you've obviously got to pay back that loan. And if your company is taking time to start up, you're obviously going to have expenses, and then that money is going to disappear. What could happen, I guess, is these Indian restaurants might get just bought out by a Japanese conglomerate. They could just get bought out by a Japanese company, but then that doesn't solve the issue of the employees. And I do sometimes question, for example, in my local restaurant, how do all of these people have visas to live here? Are they all students and just working part-time? And I do remember, this might not be true, I do remember going to a Hanami, like a Sakura viewing event in Nakameguro like 12 years ago. And I went to a kebab shop and I just drunkenly asked them, like, how are you all here? What are you all doing? And they did say they got a visa because they run a restaurant of their country, of their food, which would bounce off the labor skill visa thing again, but I'm not too sure. It's a very difficult situation. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. And I'm probably not 100% accurate with everything that I've said in this video, so I apologize if I do make mistakes. I'm just trying to read what I can and find what I can. So let me know what mistakes I've made down below, and I'll see you all next time.